DocTalk is brought to you by Multimin USA, manufacturers of Multimin 90, sure trace mineral supplementation by timed injection.
Hi there folks, welcome to DocTalk. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson here from the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University. We have a great show for you today. Dr. Mike Apley, who's a professor and boarded clinical pharmacologist, is going to talk to us about preventing antibiotic residues in your food. Stay tuned.
Feedlot situation, we use Multimin on an arrival basis. Maybe if they came in a little lighter weight, 550, 600 pounds. We use Multimin in high-stress cattle, high-risk cattle. We're looking for a better response to our vaccine. Or some of the cattle that we're looking for when we use Multimin, they come in, maybe they look a little mineral deficient. They come from parts of the country that are lower in certain mineral. So we use it on those cattle, tends to make a big difference.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value. This segment is brought to you by Rotomix, manufactured in the USA and designed for feeding performance in the feedlots, beef production, dairy, and cow-calf operations.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Well, it's always good to have you here. Dr. Mike Apley is a boarded clinical pharmacologist. He is here at Kansas State University in the Department of Clinical Sciences, and he's a full professor and teach many different classes, but he does a lot of research on antibiotics and drugs and preventing them from winding up in our food, food safety. And we decided today, through discussion with the class, that we are going to discuss residues. And the first thing we need to do is kind of, what are violative residues?
Violative residue is when there's more of the drug in that edible tissue than is allowed by law. When drugs are approved, they go through an extensive safety process with the FDA CVM. And what they do is look at how much of the drug would be toxic. They put an extensive safety factor on top of that, so it reduces the amount that can be present even smaller. They go through multiple steps until they come up with what's called a tolerance. And a tolerance is how much can be present in that edible tissue. So for example, a steak or a piece of liver on a per gram basis and still have that very extensive safety factor built in.
But when we're talking about, they're putting these at very low levels. I mean, not macroscopic.
Parts per billion.
Right, yeah. And so when we talk about there's a residue, but it's not a violative residue, I mean, we're talking about a trace, a wisp.
A very small amount, and in fact, that's how much can be there legally. So many of these drugs are used much farther before the harvest of that animal than is necessary to guarantee that low amount. So in many cases, there is in fact nothing there. The violative residue cutoff, the tolerance, is about how much can be there, and you could eat that amount of that drug every day for your entire life, and we have very good data to say there would be absolutely no problem with that being there. So that's the cutoff. If it's violative, that means that we have more than that there. And I don't know when that becomes a specific food safety issue, but the safety factor starts to erode significantly when we're above that. So our goal as food animal producers is to have none above the violative mark.
So when we have a violative residue, what happens? And we got about a minute here before the break, but in a nutshell.
The Food Safety Inspection Service is the group that does the inspection. They notify the Food and Drug Administration, Center for Veterinary Medicine, and they send out inspectors, the FDA does, that come and talk to the violator and find out what's gone wrong, how do we fix that. Now if that happens a couple times, the consumer should know that we probably aren't going to be able to sell our product anymore.
Right.
That's the end of it, is if you're a repeat violator, there's no just continuing to get away with it. You're done.
Right, and it should be.
It should be that way.
Dr. Apley, again, is a clinical pharmacologist. We're happy to have him here on the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about how we test for these violative residues and how we prevent them from getting in the food supply. You're watching DocTalk. We're glad you joined us, and we'll see you here after the break.
This segment was brought to you by Brute Cattle Equipment, makers of the Brute Stealth Hydraulic Chute. If the chute fits, swear by it. Visit our website for more information.
You know just how costly BRD can be, but did you know that bacteria like Mannheimia and Pasteurella can cause BRD? That's why veterinarians and cattle raisers focus on preventing pasteurellosis with a quality vaccine like Pulmogard PHM1. It's ready to use, highly syringeable, and provides comprehensive protection with a single dose. For pasteurellosis protection that's truly the head of the class, ask your veterinarian about Pulmogard PHM1.
Dr. Dan here. Whether I'm driving up and down the roads covering the state of Kansas, or I'm getting between Riley and Manhattan for my job, I'm driving a Ford truck. I'd like you to come out and visit my friends here at Dick Edwards Ford. They have a truck that'll suit your needs, whether you're looking for power with a Power Stroke diesel, or if you're looking for fuel efficiency with the new EcoBoost engine, they got a truck that's just right for you. They're located 2 miles east of the Town Center Mall in Manhattan, Kansas, and they'll bend over backwards to help you. And I'll see you down the road.
This hog is Hanover hoof for meal made from U.S. soybeans. Now, one hog isn't that impressive, but suppose we add another, and another, and another. Before long, you've got billions of hungry customers around the world all clamoring for the same thing. Our soybeans. Learn more about the billion-dollar appetite of animal agriculture at BeyondTheElevator.com. Brought to you by America's soybean farmers and their checkoff.
Hi there, I'm Dr. Dan Thompson from DocTalk, and I'm excited to team up with Vance Publishing to honor some of the youngest and brightest professionals in agriculture today. And you can help us by nominating someone you may know. If you know somebody under the age of 40 that excels in animal production or food animal agriculture, food safety, transportation, or others, you can go to DocTalkTV.com and nominate someone for this award. Help us honor those who help us feed the world for generations to come, and I'll see you down the road.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
This segment is brought to you by Norbrook Laboratories, manufacturers of Normycin LA, Normectin Plus, 1%, and Poron, the practical choice for your herd. Welcome back to Doc Talk. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson. I'm joined by Dr. Mike Apley, and we're both faculty members here at the College of Veterinary Medicine at Kansas State University. Dr. Apley is a boarded clinical pharmacologist and speaks all around the world on different things, different topics relating to food animals and drugs and antibiotics, and we're tickled to death to have him here to talk today about residues, an important issue. And the one thing we want to talk about with residues is, first of all, how do we get them? What are some of the reasons why they occur, you think?
I think one of the biggest reasons is just not paying attention. When we have a labeled use of a labeled product, there's a withdrawal time on the label. But if you go off that label, then that all changes and that withdrawal time no longer applies. And so your veterinarian has to set what we call an exaggerated withdrawal time, and they have a service they can use to aid them in doing that. But it's super important that if you do anything at all different from what that label says, that you have to have that modified by your veterinarian. And the only legal way to go off that label is under a veterinarian supervision.
So let's talk about, because I think one of the things that people don't understand are different reasons or different things that are off label, whether
Right.
it's how you give it or
It's the dose, how much you give, where you give it, how much you give per site, how often you give it, how long you give it for, all those things if you change them. And one primary example, if you go into your local feed store, your farm supply store, you can buy penicillin G in the cooler, Procaine penicillin
Right.
G. You can pick it up without a prescription, take it home, but we all know there's a dose we use that's different than the one that's on that label. But if you use that other dose and you use the withdrawal time that's on the label, you're going to be in big trouble. And there's another huge big thing that's changed, and you can't overemphasize it. Our testing methods have recently changed. The Food Safety Inspection Service has a new technique called mass spectrometry, and that sucker will pick it up.
That sounds.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It will pick it up down to the really small concentration. So right now, we have to stretch those out even further. Now in cattle, we have, for penicillin G, the tolerance. We have an actual amount. Pigs, we don't. So any they can detect in a pig is violative. So it's not only about what drug you're using, how you're using it off-label if you are, but also what species you're in, because it varies. The cutoff amount varies by what species you're in.
It just goes back to the importance of having the veterinarian on the farm, working with your veterinarian, especially on these types of issues, and understanding the pharmacology and what's going to happen if you use something differently than what's on the label.
And I think there's one statistic that really brings that importance of that to bear, is that when they investigated dairy residues in dairy cows, they found that in 70% of the cases with a violative residue, there was not a veterinarian involved.
Wow.
And it just shows the importance that we're there to help, and we need to be involved in all the drug use decisions, including how we will avoid having a violative residue.
Cool. When we come back from the break, we're going to continue our discussion with Dr. Apley about antimicrobial residue avoidance and how to prevent it. You're watching DocTalk. We're glad you joined us, and we're going to have more after the break.
Beef producers need a practical choice when antibiotic therapy is required. More than ever, they are reaching for non-prescription Noromycin 300 LA from Norbrook, specially formulated to produce sustained antibiotic blood levels up to 4 days in cattle. Noromycin 300 LA delivers economic, broad-spectrum disease management for pneumonia, shipping fever, pink eye, wound infections, and foot rot. See for yourself why Norbrook's Noromycin 300 LA is the practical choice for your herd.
Hi, I'm Kevin Ochsner, host of NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman and Colorado Rancher. Join me each week as the National Cattlemen's Beef Association brings you the latest updates in industry information and market news. Plus, each week we provide important educational information and features on cattlemen from across the country just like you. And we can't forget our favorite cowboy poet, Baxter Black. Join me for NCBA's Cattleman to Cattleman, debuting Tuesday nights at 8:30 Eastern, right here on RFD TV.
In a feedlot situation, we use multi-min on arrival basis. Maybe if they came in a little lighter weight, 550, 600 pounds. We use multi-min in high-stress cattle, high-risk cattle. We're looking for a better response to our vaccine. For some of the cattle that we're looking for when we use multi-min, they come in, maybe they look a little mineral deficient. They come from parts of the country that are lower in certain mineral. So we use it on those cattle, tends to make a big difference.
This segment is brought to you by Lalaman Animal Nutrition, dedicated to the development and production of natural and differential solutions for animal nutrition.
Hi there, folks. Welcome back to DocTalk. I'm joined by Dr. Mike Apley, who is a clinical pharmacologist here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. And we're talking today about violative residues and prevention of antibiotic residues and what causes them and how we measure them, and you wanted to go back to some of the testing procedures.
Yeah, I just wanted to really emphasize again the changes that have taken place. The Food Safety Inspection Service has published in the Federal Register in 2012 the revised testing system, which gives them the capability to do a lot more samples per species. They'll focus on one use class and do a whole lot more samples. And there are multiple different screens they use. One of their lead ones now is the one I alluded to in the last section, the multi-residue method, or MRM, that uses a new technology, and it looks for 50 drugs, not just antibiotics, but some other ones at very, very low concentrations. Then once they're detected, they may be violative just by being detected by that if there's no tolerance, or they go on and go to an actual approved regulatory method to say yes, no, it is or isn't above the tolerance. But I think the consumer should understand that there's really some very advanced methodology being used to test and to monitor. And all in all, we come up, I'm really proud of our record. I think we come up really clean. We have some issues. We have some places where I think some more focus can help us. But we do really well, and the testing is there. A lot of samples are tested. It starts with an initial test at the plant. If it's positive, it goes on to a bigger, major laboratory where they're tested. So that's how we keep track of it.
So new technology, it's going to be more specific, it's going to be more sensitive, and we're going to be able to do more samples.
Right.
So it's a win for the food supply.
It is. And there's the message to the consumers about what we're doing for the safety, and the message to producers is stay on label when you can. Have your veterinarian involved for on-label and any necessary off-label that they would prescribe. But if we're considering some off-label uses or some products that may not be approved, this is really the turning point where we just say, no, we probably shouldn't do, no, not probably, we shouldn't do that.
Yeah, it's hard with today's products and today's technology, not only on the testing side, but the products that we have in our medicine bag. It's hard to say why people are going off label and using things different.
Right. There's adequate opportunities for most things we treat and have challenges with label use.
Now, withdrawal times. Those are on all the labels, but you made comment that number one, we have to follow those, but number two, when we change to an extra label, the veterinarian will set a new one, a new withdrawal time, and it's going to be longer, I take it, not shorter.
And by law, if the veterinarian cannot find the information to set that withdrawal time, then you can't use that in the food animal. The animal becomes adulterated and cannot enter the food supply. So pretty big consequences for ignoring that.
Well, and there should be. We're talking about food production, wholesome, nutritious food, and we have what I consider to be the safest supply in the world.
I agree.
So we're going to come back after the break with a wrap-up with Dr. Apley. We're talking about antibiotic residues and how to avoid them and how we're testing for them. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you here after the break.
This segment is brought to you by Purple Wave Auction, the easiest, most straightforward way to sell used equipment. Purple Wave, straight, simple, sold.
This is Agriculture Today from Kansas State University. For years, pork producers have routinely utilized a byproduct of ethanol production called distillers' dried grains in hog rations throughout the various phases of pork production. K-State swine nutritionist Bob Goodband wants pork producers to be aware of a significant change of late in the nutritional composition of that feedstuff.
The ethanol plants are doing now is because the value of corn oil is so high that they're separating some of the oil out from the distillers and making a byproduct that contains anywhere from 4 to 8% oil. Because as they take out the oil, they take out the energy. It's just not as good for pigs.
This is K-State Research and Extension.
Cow-calf, stocker, and feedlot producers know that effective parasite control improves overall herd performance and profitability. Norbrook offers a comprehensive, economical line of pour-on and injectable parasiticides for every livestock operation. Consult with your local animal health supplier to set up a program that protects your investment and brings larger cattle checks this fall. See for yourself why the Noromectin line from Norbrook is the practical choice for your herd.
The Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine is a leader in food animal research and education. Our researchers are constantly expanding the knowledge of animal health and food safety. Through the Veterinary Health Center and the Kansas State Veterinary Diagnostic Lab, we provide practical services for animal producers. Home of the Beef Cattle Institute, the college is committed to animal welfare training and research. The Kansas State University College of Veterinary Medicine, knowledge and service for the future of animal production.
Got cattle? Rotomix manufactures a complete line of energy-efficient rotary and vertical feed mixers for feedlots, beef production, dairy, and cow-calf operations. Our mixers are available with the patented Generation 2 staggered rotor, the industry standard for feeding wet rations that include wet distiller's grain. Made in the USA, Rotomix mixers are designed for feeding performance that American cattlemen and dairy producers have come to expect. Rotomix, proud to offer a better mix in less time using less fuel.
This segment is brought to you by the Beef Quality Assurance Program and the Kansas Beef Council, improving animal care and beef safety for more than 20 years.
Welcome back to DocTalk. In our final segment, we're going to be talking with Dr. Mike Apley, who is a clinical pharmacologist here at Kansas State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson. I'm also a faculty member here, and we're talking about antibiotic residue avoidance. And, as we mentioned during the break, how do we avoid some of these? What are some of the big things for avoiding residues in the product? And again, we must reiterate that we do have the world's safest food supply.
Yeah.
And like any good football team, we're just trying to get a little bit better every day.
Right.
But
stay good and get better. And so the number one thing we haven't talked about yet is records.
Okay.
And the biggest thing you need to do for an animal that's been treated with any drug is you need to have a record of when that happened and when the animal's eligible to be harvested. So it might be 30 days, it might be 45 days, it might need to be set by the veterinarian in the few cases where extra label use is needed, and they are needed sometimes, but the veterinarian needs to be the judge of that. So the records. And besides the veterinarian not being involved, that was one of the number one reasons that the FDA's found in some investigations.
I've seen some really cool apps that have been developed by producers out there that are making them with Google apps and different things on their phone and Word documents that they can share. You know, farmers now with 3 or 4 different phones, and they're sharing the records, and they can punch up which cow, which pasture, when they were treated, when they're eligible for slaughter. Many different cool things going on within the industry.
Anytime an animal's shipped, it has to be a conscious task on the part of the producer. I'm going to check to see that all of these animals are clear, that they've all met withdrawal times for any drugs that were administered while in the possession of this farm. That's the number one thing we can do, and it's done every day.
I was going to say, that's the one thing we got to keep coming back. We get to a point where when we're talking directly to producers, we want to do it for the good of the industry and the good of meat production and food production, but I don't think about it when I sit down to eat a steak. I know it's been taken care of.
It is being taken care of, and we talked about the testing they're using to make sure it's being taken care of, and it's a very, very big topic amongst the producer organizations and veterinary organizations now, refocusing on this to make sure we have the policies and procedures in place that are appropriate for our capabilities today to avoid them.
And I know we try to take the hot road, but there are some groups out there that use this excuse as a reason to just, their overarching goal is they don't want us to eat meat. And so sometimes we have to balance the sound bites that we get. Get beyond the sound bite. You always say that.
Yeah. And I'm like you. I don't think about it for a second when I sit down for eating some meat with my family. But on the other hand, it's good for us as an industry to continuously refocus on this and make sure we're doing it right, and that's what we're doing.
Great. Well, thanks for being here today. Mm-hmm. And thank you for watching DocTalk. If you want to know more about what Dr. Apley and I do here at Kansas State University, you can find us on the web at www.vet.ksu.edu. Remember, always work with your local practitioner. I'm Dr. Dan Thompson. You've been watching DocTalk this morning. We're sure glad you joined us, and I'll see you down the road.
Closed caption brought to you by AgriLabs, the perfect pairing of performance and value.
DocTalk, produced in cooperation with Drovers Cattle Network and Bovine Veterinarian. For more information about this program or previous programs, go to DocTalkTV.com. DocTalk was brought to you by Multimin USA, manufacturers of Multimin 90, sure trace mineral supplementation by timed injection.
I'm Guy Collier from Collier, Hereford and Angus at Bruno, Idaho. We're calving approximately 500 head of registered Hereford, Angus, and have a fairly large recipient herd where we're doing quite a few embryo transplants as well. We raised Hereford cattle all of our lives. Started out as a commercial program. Mainly started in the purebred business in '72 in a big way. I've served on the board of directors for American Hereford Association. We show cattle on a national level at Reno, Denver, and Fort Worth. Been fortunate enough to produce several championships at those different shows, and we started using Multimin 3 or 4 years ago. Multimin is one of those products you can use to get the ultimate performance out of cattle. Around 90 to 95% of our calves are either AI or embryo transplant. Since we've started using the Multimin, we're up around 70-75% conception on our first AI service. Anytime that you're able to supply a product like this that can boost the immunity system, get a better response from your vaccines, it kind of fits into a total program. Multimin is one of those products that you know that you can use and you know that it'll be cost effective, and a product like this is very beneficial for us.